Great. So for those of you who missed the first day, my name is Esteban Kelly, and I am the Executive Director for the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. And in a moment, wait, thank you. Yeah, you're allowed to. I'll take it. So we're about to dive into a really interesting conversation. I can't wait for you to meet these folks. And we've framed it around, in fact, do you mind advancing to the next slide so that we can sort of preview who these folks are? We're framing this conversation around movements for liberation and what's possible by connecting cooperative structures, model, ownership, assets, democracy, skills in with larger bases, right? Movements for liberation. And part of that is thinking not only about formal organized labor, but new forms of organizing labor. We foreshadowed that a little bit yesterday in our conversation around shaping the future of work and looking at what that looks like, contingencies, gig volatility, income inequality. And so now what we're looking at is what is our response to some of those trends and what's happening now? How are we organizing in new ways, in old ways, in different ways? And how are we connecting some of those movements? So I wanted to start by kind of reframing this framework that it kind of builds on conversations we've been having at some of these conferences, going back to the Eastern Conference a few years ago, around when we think about the work we're doing, it needs to involve resisting all of the things that are bad, right? Building the things that are good or new or that we own, that we control. But also this middle space around transformation, that it actually isn't enough to just pull back or drop out of society or to quit a traditional job with a traditional employer and start your own thing, but that there's something that we need to connect in order to transform this larger arc and structure of how our economy and our society are set up. And I also think that part of what this panel is trying to do is think beyond the siloing of what that work looks like, that there are people doing political, electoral organizing, that's around transformation, that there's people doing solidarity economy and worker co-op organizing, and that's around building, and there's people who are organizing in unions or for climate justice, racial justice, social justice movements, anti-displacement movements around resisting, or even Me Too, around resisting, and that those things are all separate. And I think part of what we're seeing, even this weekend in LA, is what starts happening when we can start bleeding across those divisions so that the resistance work is part and parcel of the building, and that's part of the transformation as well. Sometimes I've been known to rant about the disproportionate attention that movements have toward the resistance piece of that equation. I'm not going to do a long rant about it, but you should just know I have feelings. And frankly, it's partially because it's not enough, right? That we can do a lot of no's. Right, the Zapatistas very famously said, one no, many yeses. And so I'm inspired by the many conversations around all the yeses. It's not enough to say, get your boot off my neck. We have to really be doing the work around, well, what does it even look like once the boot is off our neck? What kind of skills do we have as communities that are practicing self-direction and autonomy and control and real democracy, which, is Ed here this morning? Ed Whitfield talks about this as democracy is people coming together, not to necessarily vote or make decisions, but to address problems, to talk through them, to work through the everyday challenges in communities. And that little piece at the end that might be a decision point or a vote, that's only one little component of what democracy really is, which is communities coming together. And so for me, I think about resistance movements, which are really important and essential. And if anything, we need to double down on them and strengthen them. It reminds me of watching children playing soccer. Have you ever seen kids play soccer? I have 2 little kids. And I remember playing soccer as a kid, and it's sort of like wherever the ball is, it's the opposite of the World Cup, right? It's like wherever the ball is, every child on the football pitch is, sorry, I code switch between football, soccer, you know what I mean. Football. They're all following, they're all chasing the ball. And it really feels like in political, a lot of our social justice movements, we're all just chasing this ball around. Clean water, anti-displacement, fighting fracking, fighting police violence, surveillance, la migra, right? And while that's really important, you can't succeed in a game of soccer without spreading out, being ready to receive a pass once that ball frees up. And so our movements kind of need to build that capacity, that level of sophistication of maturing that game to play more like the Brazilians. And they were robbed. And so that's really what these conversations are meant to be getting at. So with that, I want to introduce to you, we've got this illustrious panel. We're going to hear from Lolita from the Filipino Workers Center here in Los Angeles. We're also going to hear from Manny from the Restaurant Opportunity Center, which is national, but Manny is based in LA with ROC-LA, all right? Flor is with Clean Carwash. Some of you got to meet the Clean Carwash crew through our workshops yesterday. So we'll hear about that, organizing, also here in Los Angeles, see this sequencing. Then we're gonna migrate a little further north in the state because Amit is from the Bay Area and organizes with NextGen and also a new group called the Movement Cooperative. And then we're gonna leap all the way over to the Great Lakes, to upstate New York, Western New York. What do you call it? Western New York, great. I'm a downstater, so I bring my Long Island bias everywhere I go. I'm unlearning, it's fine. So we'll hear from Kim and SEIU 1199 healthcare workers and what inspired her to start thinking about the possibilities of cooperation. With that, the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna hear from each of our panelists. They'll share their story, so I'll ask you to share your story, how you got involved in organizing, what work you do, and what impact that has had. And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation looking at these questions of power. What does it look like to not only resist, but to build and to transform, and how we link those things together. Okay.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lolita Lledo. I'm the Associate Director of the Filipino Workers and the organizer of the Courage Cooperative. So I'm also a long-time activist back in the Philippines. I was recruited on my college days to participate full-time in the struggle to oust the dictator, Marcos, and I offered all my youthful days, my most productive years in an underground movement, because at that time, we cannot, Marcos will just kill us if we challenge him openly. So for more than a decade, he was finally ousted in the 1986 EDSA, People Power Revolution in the Philippines. So even our democracy right now is not that perfect, but at least we have now the freedom to speak and to criticize and bring back democracy in our country. So in 1997, after 10 years of building nonprofit organizations in the Philippines, my family said that that's enough. You have already contributed a lot, and this time come here in LA. Half of my family are here, and so just rebuild your life, fulfill your dreams, etc. So I came in 1997 here, and but while you were waiting for job opportunities, I said that I wanted to volunteer, and I chose the Filipino Workers Center because of the word workers. I am also a trade union activist back then. And if the Filipinos will be our constituents, I can immediately connect with them with them. So when I came to their office, it's only a one table shared with Kiwa. I only saw like young Filipino American activists from UCLA, and he said, what are your programs? Where are the workers? And they said, oh, I don't think we have low immigrant Filipino workers here in the US because mostly are professionals and middle class. And so I told them that I think that is wrong because let us survey first and find if that is the reality. So we started with Filipino restaurants, workers, and from there we were introduced. We went to their homes in the different apartments, and that's where we found all the low-wage immigrant Filipino workers. We did, to develop trust and relationships, we did a food bank. We gave them all the onions, the vegetables. We got it here with the food bank. And then that started the organizing. So we first made our survey and our research on the demographics of our base. So we found out that mostly the low-wage Filipino immigrant workers are mostly professionals back home. You have teachers, nurses, accountants, etc. Are women, mothers who have left the Philippines to help bring food in the tables of their families and send their kids to school. They are also undocumented because they have overstayed their visas. And so these are the things, and so we asked them how, and then also the last is there are caregivers here in the US or in California. So we said that, so how do we, and we found out that they are also working 24 hours as a live-in caregivers and paid below minimum wage. Then we came to realize that the caregivers are part of the domestic workers sector because they are working at home in the privacy of homes. So we need to connect to the different movements that are here because as we're only one community, and for us to change the industry, we need to connect to movements. So we became a founding member of the California Domestic Workers Coalition. In 2007, we're also the founding member of the National Domestic Workers Association, Alliance, sorry. And locally, we're part of MIWON and later on the Los Angeles Workers Center Network. By becoming part of these movements, we won a lot of rights. We also found out that the domestic workers, like the farm workers, are excluded from the labor laws. So we started with our direct involvement. We brought our base, go back and forth in Sacramento, in Washington D.C., advocating for all these policies to change our situation. So we won first the overtime pay for the caregivers and nannies in California. Second, with the involvement with the local, we have the minimum wage. We won minimum wage and also 6 days paid 6 days paid sick leaves. And so these are the things that we have. So I told myself, well, even if I'm not on the direct front of our struggle back in the Philippines, I'm still helping my co-Filipinos here in the US. And it also changed my view about policy change because if you are an activist and you are trained to challenge government militantly, then we are here begging the legislators to vote yes for our bill. So it's also like a change in my framework. And then in 2014, since we have all the labor, the caregivers, we said that why don't we just form our own home care agency so that and form as a cooperative. That's the introduction for us of the cooperative movement. And so we did that. We filed business permit, etc. And at that time, it is not yet regulated by the government. So we reached a high of 40 caregivers we found work, and they're part of the cooperative. But in 2016, when the state implemented or regulated the home care industry, there's a lot of challenges for us, especially in the workers' compensation, because we have to remit 18% of the gross wages of our caregivers, and that's a big part. And then plus the affordability question, because with paying workers' comp and all the insurances, we need to charge not below $18 per hour. And that is, many families cannot afford that. But the other non-compliant or violators do not follow the law. We call them mom and pops home care agencies. They drive the prices, the prices. So it also hurt our the business of the co-op. We could not find, for example, when they called us and we said the lowest that we can give is $18 per hour, and they would, and then later on they would not go back because they found some agency only asking for $15, but they are abusing or not paying the caregivers minimum wage. So we come to conclusion that we need to really enforce. We have to do our efforts to clean this industry, because otherwise we cannot do a good business. And right now we have filed a bill in Sacramento. We won both in the Assembly and in the Senate, and just waiting for Governor Brown to sign it. It's the enforcement bill to make the rights of the domestic workers a reality. So we hope that Governor Brown will have his legacy by reforming the home care industry for the workers. And there's also two good developments for us, because we will also be introducing the Universal Long-Term Care Act, and hopefully it will pass and be implemented in either 2020 or 2021, which means that we have to prepare our caregivers for a lot of work and to make our cooperative really strong. And then the second development is the Fair Care Lab of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the one it is a group that is experimenting on different ways on how to scale good jobs for the immigrants, adopted carriage co-op. They said that we need to invest to make it strong, ready for the universal long-term care. So I think that's why we are also celebrating. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, do you mind cueing the next slide, and we'll hear from Manny.
Hello? Can you hear me? Yeah? Good? All right. Well, thank you for having me. Today I'm gonna tell you a little bit about me, my story, my involvement with my organization, some of the things that we've done, and why we did them, and our structure. So first of all, my name is Manuel Villanueva, and I'm a Mexican immigrant from Mexico City. I immigrated to the States in the year 2000. Woo! I fled a little bit of violence, a little bit of homophobia, a little bit of discrimination in my own country. And so I sacrificed everything, and I left all my support system behind me to try to better my life, right? Coming into this country, one of the first things that was accessible to me was the restaurant industry. It was a trade that I've learned from the ground up, learning different things, learning different words, adapting to a new country and language, and I consider myself as a restaurant professional. I take with pride and with honor feeding people and making their life a little better. So you all know that the restaurant industry here is very vast. It's very open. There's a lot of new restaurants coming up, and so the whole process of bringing that to your table takes a lot of people like me that didn't have that access to other opportunities to school or the financial equity in the restaurant industry is very disproportionate. Um, Working in the industry, one of my first serving jobs, when I realized there was a big problem, was when I really wanted to become a server. And my manager told me that it was a privilege to become a server, that nobody just got that position just to get it, that you need to work really hard for it, that you need to learn techniques and selling points for your items, upselling. You needed to learn the menu first of all. So I learned the menu in 3 days, came back really happy, and I said, I learned the menu, can I become a server? They said, no, your accent is very thick. It's like, okay. 2 months, I learned a few words. I think I improved my English, my accent, kind of like reduced a little bit. I went back and I said, look, I made this test. I know a few words. I knew a little bit of the techniques. I learned a few wine labels. Can I become a server now? And they told me, you know what? It's just that you don't look like the restaurant. You're not the face of the restaurant. And being told that, it's really hard to hear because they're like, okay, I've been living in this body all my life. What's wrong with it? Right? I had a few connections, and a lot of people from Mexico City know that you make your way if there's no way, right? So I made it into a server. I became a captain. I have the pride to say that I became one of the best of the best. And then when I was in that position, I was training white girls with no experience whatsoever off of college. And then I was like, I thought this was a privilege. I thought you needed to work really hard to get in here. So I felt cheated. So I acknowledged then that there was a problem. And I acknowledged then that I didn't have the right to complain if I wasn't gonna do anything about it. So I've learned some of my rights, and I learned to reach out my humanity and own it. And so when I came across the Restaurant Opportunity Center, which is the organization that now I belong in, I'm the lead organizer there. I've learned that there was a lot of healing needed to do in my community, that we needed to restructure their families, we needed to give back their humanity, and we needed to balance that power within the restaurant so they don't feel that the restaurant owners are doing a favor to the workers. They're paying them for a job that they can do. So my personal mission is that, to better their lives and for them to understand that they're people and they're valuable and they're important and they matter. So in the course of the time that I've been working in the Restaurant Opportunity Center, that now it's been 4 years and a half, we've completed a few campaigns that have been working-led, where they have to stand up against their employer and changing things and better in their workplaces, because they understand that they're getting paid for that work that they're doing, that they're important, that they're not second-class citizens, that being an immigrant shouldn't be something that you'll be embarrassed of. And so, thank you. So, we've been in Los Angeles for 9 years. We are part of the Worker Center Network, as Lolita mentioned. And we, in a way, trade our techniques and our savviness and our experience into different industries, and we support each other. We're building this community to support all of our communities. And nationwide, we're working in a thing called One Fair Wage, which some of the folks in the East Coast understand or know that there's 2 tiers of minimum wage in some states, right? If you are a tip worker, you make less of a wage than a regular worker. So right now we have 8 states in the nation that eliminated that 2-tier minimum wage, and we're trying to get as many other states as possible because we think that this equality of wages can only, make your life better and more competitive and have more access to more things, like education and just spending time with the family, simple as that. And some of the work that we've done in Los Angeles is fighting wage theft, increasing the minimum wage for everybody, increasing paid sick days. In the city of Los Angeles and in the state of California, we have 3 paid sick days, but not only implementing them, educating the people, educating the workers, educating the employers on how this needs to be implemented so they don't get in trouble. And we're continuing building this momentum of worker voices and worker power, because nobody is an expert of their story than their workers themselves. And so that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Manny. And we're going to move on to Florida in just 1 minute, but can you tell us a little bit about the Colors campaign and some of the work that ROC was doing to get involved in it's cutting out a little. Yeah, just tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Colors is a project that we have that right now, the only one operating is in New York City, but we're about to open 2 new locations. And we have 3 things that we work on as a structure in our organization. One is organizing employers that are taking the high road, that treat their workers right, give them benefits, and in a way they understand that they can be profitable if you look at your employers as people, not just as working units. The second is organizing, and the third is a program that we call CHOW, the Color Hospitality Opportunities for Workers. In chapters like mine, where we don't have a Colors, which is the restaurant, that restaurant is there to provide opportunities for workers in transition, or they want to learn the trades on the restaurant. They want to learn serving, bartending, or any other sections of the restaurant, like cooking, prepping, so they can come out with skills to go into the workforce and get better paid positions.
That's great.
And so
they're all, the program itself is organized as a cooperative, or just when there are restaurants, like you're saying there's a couple in the pipeline, or those?
Yeah, there's a couple in the pipeline, one in New Orleans, one opening in Oakland, but the one that is functioning and functions like a full service restaurant is in New York City.
That's great. All right. Thanks, Manny. Next slide. Go ahead, Flor.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for inviting us here to share a little bit of our experience. I'm very happy to share this stage with such awesome people that I get to work day to day, especially here in LA. So again, my name is Flor Rodriguez, and I am the director of the Clean Carwash campaign. And a little bit about how I got started on this. So I was born in Durango, Mexico, and while being there, my parents obviously migrated here to Los Angeles. And when they were here, they started working in the garment industry. When they started working in the garment industry, my brother and I would literally come after school and hang out in the clothing bins, you know, to see them work, sometimes up until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And it was a ritual every day after school and every weekend, maybe not Sundays sometimes. So growing up in that, I will always hear my mom, you have to go to school, you have to go to school, you have to get a better job. But I just saw a lot of times as we got older, my brother and I started translating between them and their employer, or many times also negotiating for them when we realized that that was unfair. right? So that's something that always attracted me. And though my mom wanted to be a nurse in her life, and she always pushed me to, and make sure I started a program and I learned about medical assisting. And when she said, okay, go on and work now, I told her that's not what I want to do. So came across some very awesome people that showed me the way into what a nonprofit organization was. And that organization is called IDEPSCA and works with day laborers and household workers. So at that time, going through a lot of their trainings and really understanding why the system was that way and why many people work in the same way that my parents were working, I saw my father transition then from a garment worker to a construction worker, then becoming a day laborer, right? So when I saw that, I started inviting him to the day labor side and started telling him, well, this is, how much you should be getting paid. And, so it was a transition that not only allowed me to grow, but allowed me to bring my family into that growth. But I said, this is where I want to be, right? This is what I want to do. This is my calling. This is what I want to do. And learning through that, I learned about many awesome campaigns, learned about the household workers, learned about youth in action, learned about, a campaign that was starting to form, and it started forming around the car wash industry because some awesome folks started taking a closer peek about what that industry was like and how there was nothing and no one really making sure that industry was being monitored, right? So when it started coming along, started getting involved, it was more with the environmental view on the industry, but then obviously coming across the human being, the worker, and really understanding that that's something that the conditions that they were living through were horrible, right? And learning more about the industry, then I was like, okay, I want to be a part of that campaign. And joined an organizer, learned as much as I could about the industry itself. So there I came to learn that many car wash workers have to show up to the car wash at around 7:30 to help set up the hoses, to prepare the car wash before it opens. But they couldn't clock in until the first car came through the doors, which sometimes that would be 8 o'clock on a sunny day, but other times it wouldn't. If it's foggy, I know we might not get many of those days in LA, but it happens. So they wouldn't be able to clock in until like about 9 or even 10. And that would be 1 or 2 or 3 workers, not the whole workforce. So a lot of the times they were just waiting there and sometimes got sent home without even being allowed to clock in. Right? A lot of the times when it was really busy, or till this day, many of them don't get rest breaks, don't get lunch breaks, and they have to wait around and work there. And you might ask yourself, then why are they working there? You know why? Because they're experts in the industry. Because when they do get to clock in, when they do get to work, when they receive those tips because of the amazing work that they do in a place like this, it's supply and demand. The need is there. The luxurious cars are here. The Hollywood is right here. Everybody wants to drive a nice, clean car, right? So the demand is there and the expertise is there. The car washes, we wouldn't have over 10,000 car washes registered. We're not talking about all the ones that are not registered yet and are running under the table. We wouldn't have that industry as big as it is here if there wasn't that need and if they weren't that good. So I came to learn about that. I worked alongside an awesome group, learning more about that industry, and started learning more about the organizing techniques to build and committees, not only so that workers could learn a little bit more about their rights, what it means, and that it also includes them. It doesn't matter their status. And how they can come together to bring long-lasting change at the workplace. There was a lot of interest from different organizations that have supported that, and even the steelworkers, Local 675, that took the interest that when workers were ready and they had organized at their workplace, they could also become union.
That's great. So So then started introducing the idea of a cooperative, and I know you're also working on a platform component to that.
Yeah, so because many of those car washes, I think at the time about 40 car washes became union here in Los Angeles. And after that, it's something that's very strange in the industry is that workers don't have a place where they're going to go and learn. There's no school that teaches them about how they get up that career ladder. They either have to go on their day off to shadow somebody, and then the employer wins, right? 2 workers for 1. Or they have to start taking the risk of doing jobs on whenever they have time off to learn and practice on those cars. So because there is no career ladder and no employer is going to just take the risk to put somebody who just started or who they don't know up into trying to work on a full detail of a car, which is the interior or exterior of that car because of insurance stuff, right? Like they don't want to risk that. So the workers started coming together and they said, well, we learned about our rights. We know that they cover us and we know how to organize ourselves. But then how do we get to being in the drying or in the soaping area to actually doing full details in the car wash? And they had the idea through the Worker Center to bring workers who were already in the detail, they were already experts in that area to come and train them and teach them on how to do it, and using the Worker Center as a space where they can do that in a safe way. So they came together, they thought it was just gonna be like, let's come, you teach me, we're done. And learning by popular education, yeah, that's one way, but they also needed to build a good curriculum that was going to make it come through the doors and revolve over and over again for many opportunities for many other workers. So that's exactly what happened. These are workers that some of them might not know how to read and write, but they're experts in their area, and putting that into a curriculum that allowed other workers to have that expertise, to be able to go and learn something and go move up that career ladder. This is going to be their 5th detailed training program that they're going to go through. Each program takes up anywhere from 10 to 12 workers that go through the program and then are able to either go back to their employers that I took this class and now I should be put as the detail worker here. Yeah. So that was one portion of it. And after that training, they said, well, we've done it a couple of times. The trainers became the trainees and then vice versa, helping each other. And they said, well, all of that is left is for us to be the owners. I mean, we already know how to do everything at the car wash. All that's left is we should be owners. So
how many people are involved in that as owners in the
There's a committee of a good, probably very solid 4 workers that have been through the trenches of it all, with the involvement of over 600 members in and out throughout the year that Clean has involved. But there's been really like about good 4 workers, Fausto in the picture there being one of them, and an awesome team that's on that table. Andrea and Silvia. That have been able to lead them in that process. So when the workers said they wanted to become owners, we said, great, that's awesome. And they were like, shit, now how do we get there, right? So this is one of the reasons why we're here, and we have really submerged ourselves in trying to learn the process of what a co-op means, so that we can get them on the right path, so that they can own their co-op, but also continue to feed that co-op off of workers who have been through this training process.
That's awesome. Thank you, Flor. That's great. So, Amit, you do a lot of work with youth and really important capital P political work. And so when we talk about being able to not just build the tools for a lever, but actually put our hands on that lever, I know I get inspired by the work that y'all are doing at NextGen. And then it seemed like you were able to plug into this idea, this project of pooling together the work of multiple groups who were operating at that political scale to form a cooperative to make that lever even bigger and more powerful. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, first off, I'm really excited to be here. My name is Amit Mistry. I'm the data director at NextGen America. These are like half of our staff in the field, which is super exciting. This was after we'd been in a hotel for 4 straight days together, so no one killed each other. But yeah, so at NextGen, we are probably a more political organization than other folks here. We have staff in 11 states and on like 300 college campuses, registering people and getting them ready to vote in November, which is a lot of work, and everyone's. And what we do a lot there. We're trying to flip the House, flip the Senate, all that sort of good stuff. But we also know that we're not necessarily the best messenger for everything. My organization was founded by a hedge fund billionaire. That's not going to carry weight with a lot of people. But so we were first approached about what ended up being called the Movement Cooperative, which is right now it's about 30 groups that have banded together all across the progressive political spectrum, working together to make change. A lot of these groups were formed after the 2016 election. I can't give you the names of all of them because as a cooperative, we're still trying to figure out what the rules are, which with 30 groups is a little bit difficult, but it's groups like NextGen, Open Progress, and Indivisible, and other groups like that. We're basically, at the core function of it, getting access to political data and tools. My organization spends probably $500,000 every year on getting access to these tools. And for smaller groups, that's just impossible. Your budget might be $500,000. So these 30 groups have combined together to negotiate with vendors and to get the things so they can run their program more effectively and more efficiently, and also work together to share resources, knowing that, hey, NextGen wants to do something in Florida, but Indivisible has a much more active base of volunteers there. Let's just do the program through them or work together somehow so we're not being duplicative and we're able to achieve our goal, which in Florida a couple weeks ago was making Andrew Gillum the first Black man to be the Democratic nominee for governor. And so working with the Movement Cooperative, it's also building up the power that each group has, that each member has. Some of the members have been in existence for a few years, some are only like 4 or 5 months old and don't necessarily, and this way they can share access both to tools and also to experts, I guess is the best word. So there's staff, there's other people that are helping, advisors, so they can get up to speed on how the political world works and can leverage what other members or partners have done before, and just do some kick-ass work, to be frank. It's been working.
We're running a little short on time, so I'm gonna stop you there and move on just so we can hear from Kim as well. Do you mind advancing the next slide?
Manuel?
Yeah, you got it. SEIU Buffalo.
Hey. So I'm not going to say much about me, except that I have done all things traditionally labor, and that includes strikes, running union elections straight up from NLRB style, bargaining contracts, representational work, all of that. The project that we're working on now is really the most inspirational. We are working with home care workers in Western New York, and that includes right now 3 counties, probably a total of about 10,000 home care workers. We've been able to aggressively reach out to home care workers through a squad, a field team that are out there talking to everyone who wears scrubs, and a fantastic media team that's doing Facebook outreach. So these are folks that work in homes where they don't have a common place where they come for employers, so we can't meet them outside work, or we can't, they're independent on most grounds. So we are working with Time of Day Media, who is a co-op, and they're fabulous. I recommend them for all your organizing needs. And we are working with several other community partners. Buffalo has a great community set of organizations. So much exciting stuff is happening there. So we're partners with Partnership for Public Good, Open Buffalo, Cooperative Buffalo. I'm going to miss some, Push, Coalition for Economic Justice, Metro Justice in the Monroe County area, NOAA, Voice. So labor, clergy, and community organizations are really coming together. Strategic partners we have in this work are the University of Buffalo. They provide legal support because right now we're working in an area where there is 0 union density in home health care. So that leads to wage and hour violations, it leads to oppression, it leads to so we have partnered with the University of Buffalo legal squad, the law school that actually handles our cases pro bono, and we also have a local labor law organization that will also take those classes or cases. We have a Western New York WinCosh that we're partnering with for some training. We're able to offer home care workers free trainings to enhance their skills, build their resumes, help them be able to increase their dollar value in the market. And out of this organization, we hope to birth the co-op and then nurture it and help it grow. So all of these are potentials. We see nothing but potential here. And again, this is a nonprofit organization that we are forming in a couple months that is non-traditional bargaining unit. And we're funded right now by a partnership between SEIU and 1199.
That's amazing. So, and am I right that as part of the Buffalo delegation here, you've had an opportunity not only to meet other worker owners and people in the cooperative care industry, but also some of the folks who are connected to SEIU 1199 downstate in the Bronx?
Yes, they're inspirational. The women from Wisconsin are inspirational. I mean, this has just been so inspiring. And we have over there my communications director and Diane Bryce, who is a home care worker, member of Healthcare Workers Rising, and like we're just gushing with inspiration.
Wow. And so I'm picking up on this theme of building this momentum and also the interconnections, even just hearing how your stories and the real work, like your real actual relationships personally and organizationally. And I know that there are even more than we talked about that push Buffalo as part of People's Action, which is part of the movement cooperative. And so all of these things are even more interconnected. Thinking of this theme of interdependence and the ways in which that's critical to building power, I want to just go right down the line real quick in our remaining few minutes and just hear from you briefly. What do you think that cooperatives can do for movements, for your organizing? And what do you think that movements can do with cooperatives? What are those linkages there? So if we're moving toward building power, what are ways that we in the room can resource, support, and be in solidarity with workers, and what are things that I think we could help workers figure out in exploring these tools of ownership and assets and workplace democracy.
I like to add, I think it puts the workers at the front of the industry that they've been fighting for so long, brings that human aspect, but allows them to charge their dollar value per hour for the work that they do. So it's just really building this movement and developing into co-ops that puts them really in the front of the industry to make the either changes that need to happen in legislation or in the industry to benefit and thrive and at the front of the industry instead of pushing it or fighting against it. I think that's what the co-op model and that training model does.
That's great. That's great. And it makes a lot of sense also how by putting workers at the front and then linking up with some of these political movements where we're getting the right people in office to make those decisions and to decide on regulations and wages and all of these things, whether they're about all workers and things like sick days, or whether they're things that are industry specific about reimbursement rates for home care, or whether you're in a tipped industry or not. Do you have thoughts about that, Amit?
Yeah, I was going to say that what we're trying to do is put people at the front of everything we do and like raise up their stories. So when we were in Detroit at that camp, we asked all of our fellows to like record videos of why they're doing this work. My story of self is really lame. It's not really exciting. Theirs are so real. And they're talking about how like they're worried if they lose their insurance, they're gonna have to decide between rent and paying for their insulin, or that I remember we had one fellow, her father is a undocumented trans woman, and like she's worried what's gonna happen to her dad. So it's like putting those stories first instead of just talking about the policies and like the how a bill becomes law. Like no one cares about that. It's really hard to get people motivated. When you put these stories forward, That's what gets people engaged and I think can make change happen.
That's great, thanks. Did you want to add thoughts about it, Lolita?
Yeah, for me, the connection is the cooperatives. The cooperative is a dress rehearsal for socialism because we all know that we are starting to practice what we preach, and the cooperative is like one way that the workers are owning the product, and then it goes back to them. No one gets rich out of their labor. So yeah, it's one way of experiencing socialism in the grassroots, even if we have not won it nationally. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Manny?
Well, I think for me, what I want to add is that we need to acknowledge everywhere we go the value of the work that people put into whatever they do. And nobody's as expert as their own story as the worker themselves, right? And so whenever you go out to a restaurant, just be mindful of that and tip your servers really good.
Great. So I did, sometimes I get a little carried away with myself. I did start mapping out some ideas of what it could look like to connect up for power in these kind of 3 different buckets. One is having strong foundations, which is what you're each doing in your work and your organizing. It's what we're doing in our organizations and by connecting up at events like the Worker Co-op National Conference. So strengthening labor, shoring up cooperative business success, that it's not just about a philosophy of power, it's about having the technical, that we need to be winning in the marketplace, not just in the marketplace of ideas, right? And so that looks like technical assistance, healthy internal organizational dynamics. The next set of buckets is about this idea of interdependence and linking up as networks. For us, that means joining up as members, for example, of our Worker Co-op Federation. For unions, it's also about increasing union density and union membership. It means showing up and supporting the fight, the defense against the attack on unions, especially public unions nowadays. And so for us, it's not just membership, but what you can do with that membership. It looks like the engagement once people are involved and at the table. We organize with peer networks and local groups and chapters, and connecting up and building those relationships outside of our own individual organizations. And then finally, it's then using that power and that connectivity and that strong foundation to build that momentum. So it's the solidarity question, you know, thinking about what does it look like to really show up, and not just to show up for one another, but to build our movements in a way where our wins become mutual, where it ends up mattering to me that we've got a great candidate in Florida, or it ends up mattering to me that we're able to change the state laws around labor in California, and that the bill that you're fighting for, it matters to us and our workers too. And so that solidarity can become less and less of a stretch, because it can be more aligned and cohesive in the work that we're doing. I don't know what that says. But can you go to the great? Can you go to the last slide? Because I think we're wrapping here. Some of the things that you can do, speaking of building power, are first of all, you can become a sustainer of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops. We have computers set up in the back for you to do that, and help us reach our goal for this weekend. We're trying to sign up another 30 people. We got a handful yesterday. We need to get all of you signed up if you're not already sustainers. Can I see who is a sustainer currently, who's here? Yes, thank you, these wonderful, beautiful people. If you're a sustainer already, you can grab one of these buttons from the back. And if you sign up as a new sustainer, we're giving away bags that say "Think Outside the Box." Little perk. What? As much as you want. It's as little as $10 a month. 10, 15, 20, and it goes on and on. We have people who contribute $50 a month. It's up to you. So we'll set you up with that. You can join in the back. You can also just join at our website, usworker.coop. There's buttons there. What else? You can have your co-op join as a federation member. We have applications there and on our website. Or if you're already a member, you can get involved in one of our member councils and networks, the Immigrant Workers Council, the Racial Economic Justice Council, the Policy and Advocacy Council, the Union Co-ops Council, and any of our peer networks, which are new and developing. And then third, pretty importantly, just to stay involved and plugged in. The more we're in touch with each other, the more we can start connecting these dots. We can push legislators, we can push for the specifics that people are weaving into their proposals, laws. And then we can also report back out to our allies and other movements for economic justice. And then you, maybe this is more passive, but can stay informed and plugged in to us and our networks so that we're ready for action. So that when there is a moment to say we're showing up to defend contingent workers, here's what we can do right now, or we're showing up for a rally, here's what we can do, or we can call in to senators or governors. That's really helpful for you to be in touch and for you to get more people in your workplace in touch. In terms of the logistics, what are we doing next?